Let me describe two people to you. Same city, same age, late 20s. Both earning right around $74,000 a year, essentially the national median. On paper, identical. Person one is at a restaurant on a Friday night, splitting a $340 bill 6 ways and putting his portion on a card that's already carrying $5,800. He'll pay the minimum next month. He always does. He considers himself pretty good with money because he hasn't missed a payment in 2 years, and he has a savings account with $420 in it. Person two is at home on the same Friday night. She made dinner. She has 4 months of expenses in a high-yield account, a Roth IRA on automatic, and 0 credit card debt. She doesn't look like she's winning anything. She's not posting about it. But on Sunday night, while her friends are quietly dreading Monday, she's thinking about whether she wants to take Thursday off. Same income. Completely different financial reality. The difference isn't luck or salary. It's 15 specific behaviors. And most people have no idea which side of the line they're actually on. My name is William, and today we're going to find out. Before we get into the signs, one thing needs to be established. Average in America does not mean fine. It means 68% of people living paycheck to paycheck. It means the majority of adults unable to cover a $1,000 emergency without going into debt. Average is not a destination. It's a current pulling most people in a direction they didn't choose. The bar for doing better than average is lower than most people assume. Let's find out if you clear it. Sign 1. You have an emergency fund covering at least 3 months of expenses. According to Bankrate's most recent data, only 46% of American adults have enough saved to cover 3 months of expenses. 24% have 0 emergency savings. Not a little, 0. And 59% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 surprise expense without borrowing. Here's what no emergency fund actually feels like. It's not dramatic. It's a low-level hum of anxiety that never fully goes away. It's checking your bank balance before you go grocery shopping. It's a $700 car repair feeling like a genuine threat rather than an inconvenience. And when the hit comes, 25% of people put it on a credit card, which means a one-time problem becomes a multi-month debt at 22% interest. The emergency doesn't just hurt once, it keeps hurting. If you have 3 months of expenses sitting in an account right now, you're in the top half of the country by this metric alone. Sign 2. You're contributing to a retirement account at any level. 36% of non-retired Americans have no retirement account whatsoever. The median 401k balance across all age groups is $38,176. For workers under 35, the median is $17,200. At standard withdrawal rates, that's roughly 8 months of average rent. Congratulations on your 8 months. The math on delay is brutal in one direction only. $200 a month, invested at 25 at 7% annual returns, produces approximately $525,000 by 65. Starting at 35, with the same amount produces $243,000. Same contribution, same rate. A single decade of delay costs $282,000, and approximately 25% of workers with access to a 401k don't contribute enough to capture their full employer match, leaving guaranteed free money on the table every single paycheck. If you're contributing anything, even below the recommended amount, you're ahead of more than a third of the country. Sign 3. You pay your credit card balance in full every month. Total U.S. credit card debt hit $1.277 trillion in late 2025. 47% of all cardholders carry a revolving balance. The average balance is $7,886 at a 22.3% APR. Pay the minimum on that balance, and you'll spend over $10,000 in interest and more than 20 years clearing it, assuming you never use the card again, which almost nobody manages. Consider someone carrying $6,400 at 22% interest, paying only the minimum each month, never missing a payment, considering themselves responsible. By the time that balance reaches 0, they'll have paid approximately $15,000 for $6,400 worth of purchases. An ignorance tax of $8,600 builds slowly enough that it never triggers an alarm. If you pay in full every month, You're using a system designed to trap people and walking out of it untouched. Sign 4. You invest in the market consistently. 38% of American adults own no stock whatsoever. Not through a retirement account, not through an index fund, nothing. The wealthiest 10% of Americans own 87% of all stock. The bottom 50% own approximately 1%. The engine is running. The seats are not evenly distributed. Less than 1 in 4 actively managed funds outperforms its passive benchmark over a 10-year period. You can hire a professional, pay higher fees, receive confident-sounding quarterly calls, and statistically lose to a boring index fund that just sits there and tracks the market. Consistent, automatic, unremarkable investing is one of the most powerful financial behaviors available, and it's what most Americans have either never started or endlessly overthought. Sign 5. You save more than 10% of your income. Financial professionals recommend saving 15 to 20% of gross income. The current U.S. personal savings rate is approximately 4.5%. The median household, earning $83,700, is saving roughly $3,700 annually at that rate. A household saving 15% of the same income sets aside $12,555, more than 3 times as much on an identical paycheck. Invest the difference at 7% for 30 years, and the gap becomes approximately $890,000 in additional wealth, built entirely on the same income, different percentage. If your savings rate clears 10%, you're already operating at more than double the national average. That gap compounds silently in your favor every single year. 5 down. Here's something worth sitting with. Every sign so far is something most people assume they're doing reasonably well at. The 68% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck don't identify as financially struggling. They identify as normal. That belief, not the behavior, is what makes the pattern so durable. The next 10 signs are where the gap between what people think is true about their finances and what's actually true gets genuinely uncomfortable. Sign 6. Your net worth is positive. 8% of U.S. households carry a negative net worth. Among Gen Z adults, self-reported surveys put the figure at 31%. Total U.S. household debt hit a record $18.8 trillion at the end of 2025. The median net worth for households under 35 is $39,000, meaning half of young Americans have less than that, separating their assets from their liabilities. Negative net worth has a texture. It's the hesitation before opening the bank app. It's running the numbers at 11 p.m. and getting the same answer every time. Simply being in the black, more assets than liabilities, is an achievement a meaningful portion of the population hasn't reached. If your number is positive and growing, you're ahead of where a substantial number of people are currently standing. Sign 7. You own your car outright or keep payments genuinely manageable. The average monthly payment on a new car reached $767 in late 2025. 1 in 5 new car loans now carries a payment exceeding $1,000 a month, a figure that was 4.3% of loans in 2019 and is now 20%. The average loan term is nearly 69 months. 20% of buyers extend to 84 months or longer, 7 years of payments on an asset losing value every day it's driven. 29.3% of trade-ins in late 2025 carried negative equity. The average amount underwater, $7,214, a record, which means millions of buyers paid $7,214 for a car they no longer own, then started fresh payments on the next one. Wealth destruction with heated seats and a backup camera. If you own your car outright, as roughly 36% of car owners do, every month someone else sends $767 to a lender for a depreciating asset. You're sending that money somewhere else. Sign 8. You actually track where your money goes. 86% of Americans say they have a budget. Approximately 51% demonstrate it with their actual spending behavior. That 35-point gap is doing considerable work. The average American spends $219 per month on subscriptions when every charge is itemized. Self-estimates average $86. The $133 gap is the ghost of every free trial forgotten, every premium tier that auto-renewed, every app that charges monthly for something used twice in January. And beyond subscriptions, 48% of social media users have made an impulse purchase after seeing a product in their feed. Half the people scrolling any given platform have sent money to a brand because an algorithm identified the exact right moment to show them the exact right product. If you know what you actually spend each month, not approximately, actually, you have financial self-awareness that the majority of American adults genuinely don't have. Sign 9. Your credit score sits above 750. The average USFICO score dropped to 714 in 2025, the first decline in over a decade. Approximately 48% of Americans sit at 750 or above. Only 24% have crossed 800. Here's why it matters beyond the number itself. Two people applying for the same mortgage, one at 680, one at 760, will pay tens of thousands of dollars difference in total interest over 30 years on identical loan amounts. A strong credit score is a permanent, compounding discount on every dollar you ever borrow. And the behaviors that build it, paying on time, keeping utilization low, are the same behaviors showing up on every other sign on this list. The score is a symptom of the habits, not the other way around. Sign 10. You understand basic financial concepts well enough to act on them. Only 27% of Americans answered 5 or more out of 7 basic financial literacy questions correctly in the FINRA Foundation's most recent study. The TIAA Institute scored American adults at 48% correct across 28 standard financial concepts. 48% is not passing. It's barely present. The consequences aren't theoretical. People who don't understand compound interest pay for it in credit card charges that accumulate for years. People who don't understand tax-advantaged accounts leave retirement money in taxable ones unnecessarily. Financial illiteracy has a price tag. It just arrives distributed across thousands of small decisions that never individually trigger an alarm. If you understand how a Roth IRA differs from a traditional 401k, how compound interest accelerates in both directions, and why an index fund tends to outperform most active management, you're in the top quarter of financial literacy in this country. That quarter makes measurably different decisions because they can see the math underneath the choices before committing to them. Sign 11. You have adequate insurance coverage. Only 51% of Americans own any life insurance. 75 million people have none. And 72% of uninsured adults significantly overestimate what a basic term life policy costs, meaning millions are going without coverage based on a misconception about price they never bothered to verify. Disability insurance is even more neglected. Just 18% of U.S. adults carry it, despite 1 in 4 20-year-olds experiencing a long-term disability before age 67. If you couldn't work for 6 months, not permanently, 6 months, nearly half of American households would face genuine financial hardship. Not inconvenience, hardship. If you have both life and disability coverage, you've protected against the catastrophic tail risk that everyone assumes won't happen to them until it does. Sign 12. You don't skip medical care because of cost. A KFF health tracking poll found that 36% of American adults skipped or delayed needed medical care in the prior year due to cost, including 37% of people who were insured. People paying monthly premiums and still avoiding care because of what showing up costs. Skipping the $200 checkup to save money and paying $4,000 in an emergency room 3 months later is the financial equivalent of skipping oil changes and then buying a new engine. Technically, a choice, not a good one. If you can see a doctor when you need to and absorb a medical bill without going into debt, that's a level of financial stability more than a third of Americans, including many with coverage, currently cannot claim. Sign 13. You have more than one source of income. Between 27% and 38% of Americans report some form of secondary income, but LendingTree found that 61% of people with a side income say their financial life would be unaffordable without it. The majority of people with a second income stream aren't building on top of a foundation. They need it just to maintain the floor they're already on. A secondary income stream that's additive, one that accelerates your position rather than sustains your baseline, is a fundamentally different thing. Rental income, dividends, freelance work that funds investments rather than rent. Research on self-made millionaires consistently shows 65% had at least 3 income streams by the time they reached that net worth. If you've built something that generates money beyond your primary paycheck and you don't need it just to survive the month, you've moved from financial fragility into financial optionality. Sign 14. Your spending hasn't risen in lockstep with every raise you've received. Goldman Sachs's most recent retirement survey found that 41% of workers earning between $300,000 and $500,000 a year live paycheck to paycheck, at $400,000 annually. Goldman attributed this directly to lifestyle creep, the mechanism by which luxuries quietly reclassify themselves as necessities with each income increase. The lease upgrade becomes standard. The private school becomes non-negotiable. The $280 Tuesday dinner becomes unremarkable. 78% of Americans report making purchases they immediately regret, not occasionally. Most people, most of the time, are spending money they didn't plan to spend on things they didn't actually want, and they know it within minutes of the transaction. If you've directed income increases into savings and investments rather than proportionally larger obligations, you've avoided a trap that successfully catches people at every income level on the spectrum.
Sign 15. You're not living paycheck to paycheck. 68% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck as of 2025. More than half of American workers need their next paycheck to cover current expenses, not savings, not investments, just maintaining the existing baseline. And the version of this statistic that deserves more attention: 50% of earners making $100,000 or more describe themselves the same way. 41% of earners making $300,000 to $500,000. High income does not automatically produce financial stability. In many cases, it just creates higher cost obligations that demand high income indefinitely. The treadmill gets faster. The exit doesn't appear. Living paycheck to paycheck doesn't just mean money is tight. It means every decision requires permission from the next paycheck. You can't take the risk on the job you'd actually want. You can't leave the situation that's wearing you down. You can't absorb a hit without everything becoming unstable simultaneously. The Federal Reserve found that 69% of Americans would be worried about covering living expenses if their primary income disappeared. If you are in the 31% who wouldn't be, because the savings exist, the margin is real, and the investments are running, you've built something two-thirds of the country is still working toward.
Here's what all 15 signs have in common. Not one of them requires a specific income level. Not one. They require behavior, sustained, consistent, frequently boring behavior that most people either haven't started or have been intending to start for longer than they'd like to admit. The person saving 15% of $60,000 is in a stronger long-term position than the person saving 2% of $100,000. The person driving a paid-off $14,000 car with a funded emergency account is more financially resilient than the person in a leased $65,000 SUV with $300 in savings. Those comparisons sound backwards. The math is not. Average in America in 2026 is not a safe place to be. It's a current, and currents are easy to drift in without noticing until you look up and realize how far you've traveled without meaning to. The question was never whether you're doing okay today. It's whether you're building towards something on purpose or just keeping up with everyone who isn't.